Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And today I brought with me both of the meditation books, so I want to get into them and see what they have to say to us today. I believe that today is September 17th. I just looked on the computer before I came up here. September 17th, so let's look in the language of letting go. I think it's been a couple days, since maybe 2 or 3 days since I've filmed and over here and read these meditations, so I might have a couple to pick from. Oh, going through hard times, that might be a good one. That's September 15th. Did I read that one last time? No, I don't think I did. What's good for me? Times of reprogramming, healing. I think healing was the last one. September 16th, revenge. Oh, that might be a good one. September 17th, new relationship behaviors. You know what? I'm not even going to look in Journey to the Heart today because these are so good. Let's read Getting Through the Hard Times first. September 15th. This is a quote from Codependent No More. We are sturdy beings, but in many ways, we are fragile. We can accept change and loss, but this comes at our own pace and in our own way. And only we and God can determine the timing. Codependent No More. Hard times, stressful times, are not all there is to life, but they are part of life, growth, and moving forward. What we do with hard times or hard energy is our choice. We can use the energy of hard times to work out and work through our issues. We can use it to fine-tune our skills and our spirituality, or we can go through these situations suffering, storing up bitterness, and refusing to grow or change. Hard times can motivate and mold us to bring out our best. We can use these times to move forward and upward to higher levels of living, loving, and growth. The choice is ours. Will we let ourselves feel? Will we take a spiritual approach, including gratitude, toward the event? Will we question life and our higher power by asking what we're supposed to be learning and doing? Or will we use the incident to prove old negative beliefs? Will we say, nothing good ever happens to me? I'm just a victim. People can't be trusted. Life isn't worth living. We do not always require hard energy or stress to motivate us to grow and change. We do not have to create stress, seek it, or attract it. But if it's there, we can learn to channel it into growth and using it for achieving what's good in life. God, let my hard times be healing times. I think this is a great meditation, but I feel a little bit differently than how the meditation is presenting itself. Because it goes in here and talks about hard times, stressful times are not all there is to life, but they are part of life, growth, and moving forward. And I'm a big believer in that. And I think that took me a long time to understand that I'm a big believer that, and whenever I say this, I don't know if it's because I speak so fast or what, but sometimes it's misunderstood, that life is bittersweet. That it's the bitter and the sweet. That it's both of those that make up life, all of it together, right? Like, there's going to be sad times. There's going to be tragic times. There's going to be times of joy. There's going to be times of celebration. And to me, in all honesty, it's making it through, living all of those, and also celebrating. It's hard to understand, like, celebrating the hard times, like loss that we have in our life, and celebrating. But that, to me, is a time to reflect, a moment to look back in our lives and say, like, when I lost my mom, you know, I think for me, that was a really, really sad moment. I was very, very numb. But I think at the same time, like, being around friends and family and remembering good times that I had with my mom and remembering all of that, like, I don't know that we have many of those opportunities in life. Sometimes we don't really realize how good we have it until we go through some tough times. And, you know, I think this is something that I didn't really understand until late in life. It's not like I'm wishing for good times. I don't want that. I don't want that for me. I don't want that for anybody else. But I think that, like, if every moment of every life was just spectacular, I think we would start taking for granted all of those things. So it's not that we wish for the horrible times or the bad times, but I do think that those times offer us moments of reflection or comparison. My cousin and I, we were driving around today doing errands and stuff like that. And we were talking about, we said something about, like, winning the lottery and kind of joking about it. And she was like, we really have great lives. You know, there's a lot of people that have it so much worse than us because there's millions of people in this world that have it so much. I said millions. And we started just kind of like going back and forth. We didn't say we were going to do it. She was just like, you know, we do this. And I said, and we get to celebrate holidays together. And she said, you know, and we each have homes. And I said, and we get to travel a lot. We both have spouses that love us. We have family that, I mean, we have so much. Our lives are so plentiful, you know, that I think that I started to look look at it that way. But one of the things that I realized, like, I think this meditation kind of leans to, and this is where I don't necessarily agree with it 100%. I think that this meditation leads to, she says, what we do with hard times or hard energy is our choice. We can use the energy of hard times to work out and work through our issues. We can use it to fine-tune our skills and our spirituality, or we can go through these situations suffering, storing up bitterness, and refusing to grow or change. I think that that question, for me, and maybe I can only speak to my experience, comes later. I think that in that moment, I'm so raw and so vulnerable. My feelings are so raw and so vulnerable that I don't know I'm in a position when I'm going through a really hard time or a time of loss or trauma in my life, and I'm sure most of you have experienced it. All of ours is different. In that moment, please don't ask me to be my best version of my most spiritual self, however you define that. I just don't know that in that moment. Like, I do think that some people have that ability. I don't know that I'm there yet. I think I'm still growing and learning. And I think that I think what I've had to learn is I deserve to allow myself to feel my feelings in that moment, to feel vulnerable, to feel raw, to feel that raw emotion. And in the past, sometimes when I would push through those feelings and I would be like, no, I've got to put on an act, or this is a teaching moment for me, or this is a healing moment for me. And I didn't really allow myself to feel my feelings. I didn't process them really authentically, and I'll be honest with you, I really don't think until after the accident occurred that I was in, that I was forced to sit on my front porch every day, couldn't really walk anywhere, really couldn't do anything. And I was just forced to sit there with my thoughts, and I had people that said things to me at that time, like, this is a teaching moment for you, or what can you learn from this? I wasn't there yet. My feelings were so raw, and I went through those feelings of, like, things that she says in here where she talks about, life isn't worth living. Why that person and not me? What's this all for? Like, I shouldn't be here. Those were the thoughts. And I think that at that time, thank God I didn't act on those thoughts, but I think at that time I had to feel those thoughts. I had to go through those, emotions. And I started therapy very early into that process. And I almost, like, today when I talk to people and they'll say, like, they just, like, if they're going through grief, I'll say, sometimes I think you need to feel your grief and then maybe start therapy. I think, like, if I had started therapy on day 2, I don't even know that I could have put words to my thoughts. But when I did, and my therapist has really helped me through the years and kind of being able to process not just that situation, but all of the events in my life that have occurred, all the trauma I've experienced, all the pain in retrospect. But in that moment, I think that there is strength in giving truth to our feelings and our emotions and allowing people the grace and the room to feel their emotions, to feel their pain in that moment, and not to rush them through it. Not to say, well, don't you think you've been stuck here too long? And I think 2, 3, 4 years maybe at the point, not to say, don't you think you've been stuck here too long, but to say, what can I do to help you? Because I don't want to see you here for the rest of your life. Because for me, that was the question. In any situation, whether it was the accident, my mother's passing, friends of mine's passing, relationship issues that I had had years ago, before I met my husband, whatever. Like, I had to ask myself, at what point do I choose to stay stuck? And what point do I want to say, okay, I've been in pain, bitterness, anger, misery, resentment long enough, self-victimization, that I don't want to stay here because I am literally giving away my life to all of these negative emotions. That I am still here and I have a life to live and I want to be grateful for that. So what do I need to do to work through this? Now, you asked me that the day after, the week after, the month after, maybe even the year after a painful loss or a painful experience. Maybe I'm not there yet, okay? That's where I say that I think that there is grace and strength and giving ourselves time to feel the pain, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to not mask it, to not push it down. When somebody says to you, how are you doing? You go, I'm not really doing okay today. Well, what can I do? I don't need you to do anything. I just need to feel my pain. I need to allow myself to feel like crap today. I need to allow myself to feel pity. I need to allow myself to feel remorse. I need to allow myself to feel guilt. I need to allow myself to feel anger. I need to allow myself to feel hurt. And if I allow myself to feel it, part of moving through it is allowing myself to feel those feelings. If I don't allow myself to feel it, I will never move through that pain. And part of getting to the other side is allowing ourselves the grace and the strength and the space to feel those feelings. Once you're on the other side of that, then it's important to ask myself, do I want to stay in bitterness and resentment, anger, guilt, remorse for the rest of my life? Or do I want to do something with my experiences and turn my wounds into wisdom? Do I want to do something with it and hopefully live the best life possible? And that's where, when she says in here, the choice is ours. Will we let ourselves feel? Again, I think is the question. Will we take a spiritual approach, including gratitude toward the event? I don't know that that's a question to ask me moments after it's happened. You know what I mean? Will we question life and our higher power by asking what we're supposed to be learning and doing? I can remember like when my mom passed away, and like friends of mine, and I think it's because we don't really know the language to speak about, but people would say she's in a better place, or, you know, like, you know, she's, you know, at peace now. And I was like, but I want her here. But I don't, like, it's selfish. Like guilt, I think that guilt, like grief is selfish sometimes. And I was like, I want her here. You know, and yes, I want my mom at peace. I don't want her to be in pain anymore, but I want her here. And I felt very guilty about that, about wanting my mom here, but also knowing that she wasn't in pain anymore. But I don't think that people really know what to say. And I think that when somebody would say that to me and they'd say, your mom, you know, just want you to know your mom's at peace now. And I just go, okay, thanks. Like, I appreciate it. I don't really know what to say to that. What I wanted to say is, let me feel my feelings. I'm hurt. I'm sad. I'm angry. And I was angry at God, because that was the only thing that could make sense of it. I didn't understand it. And I think a lot of things happen in our lives that don't make sense. I've had 30 things, tragic things happen to me in my life that make absolutely no sense, and I can't make sense out of them. And yet they happened. But in those moments, in that day, that week, that month, that year, I don't know that forcing myself to have a learning moment from that was where I needed to be. I think a year or two down the road, or whatever that time looks like for each person individually, and it's really based on the event. Not that there was any time limit to it. I mean, each event has been different. Looking back on it, then I could say, well, this is what I learned spiritually, emotionally. This is how I got through it. These are the tools and the skills I used to get through it. Maybe down the road, that will help me, you know, be a better person. But I don't know that, like, in that moment. I think it was really important. I think a huge part of my healing and growth, I mean, I hear people talk all the time about, like, healing is pain. Healing is pain. Growth is pain. We talk about, like, growing pains, like, that's part of healing emotionally too. I think I had to allow myself to feel the pain, and that is one of the proudest things I am of myself in the past 30 years of my life since I've been sober, is that I have allowed myself moments of grace to really feel the pain of what I'm going through in that moment. And I'm thankful for that. So I'm not big into rushing people through that. I'm big into allowing people to give them the space that they deserve to feel their emotions. And when they're ready to move through it, move through it. And I don't know if that's a question you ask somebody else, or that's a question we ask ourselves, but it's a question I had to ask myself. Do I want to continue to stay stuck? I can tell you that and when I had people around me that were like, I'm worried about you, or like, what can I do to help you move on? I would hear people say all the time, move on, move on. And I've said it on video before. It's just a slip of a tongue. I don't love that saying move on from whatever situation you're going through. I love the saying move through, because I do believe that we move through the pain to the other side. But I had people that said it to me all the time out of love. They said it out of love. I know that. What do I need to do to help you move on? What can you do to move on? I think it's time to move on. They would say all these things to me. And in my head, I'm thinking, I don't know. Like, it didn't feel right to me. It felt like I hadn't paid enough homage yet to that situation, or I hadn't felt guilty enough or remorse enough, even though I was beating myself up every day, or it was a betrayal to move on. I think that's a huge part of guilt we don't talk about, is that the betrayal to move on is almost like we're forgetting somebody. I even feel like that with the dogs, like with the new dogs, Walter and Otis. Sometimes I'll be playing with them and I feel like it's a betrayal to Boo and Tucker and Pee-Pee, you know, like, and I think like we have to allow ourselves grace to feel the emotions. And I'm really proud of myself. And I really learned that through my mom's passing. I hadn't really learned that till then. And I've talked about this before, that when my mom passed away, a song would come on and I would just allow myself to sit in it. Or, you know, I would put on a movie that my mom loved, and I would just let myself just bawl watching it and cry. And I let myself feel my emotions, and I let myself feel the pain. And I'm really proud of myself for allowing myself to do that, because that almost taught me that I'm not going to be ashamed of crying. I'm not going to be ashamed of being an emotional person. I have a friend of mine years ago that said, if I can't cry over it, it didn't mean anything to me to begin with. And she didn't mean that we have to cry over everything. What she meant is that things that mean something to us in our life should have some emotional attachment to it. Some of us cry, some of us don't, but we should feel some emotion attached to it, right? But I think that we all deserve, as human beings living this shared experience, the grace and the space to feel our feelings in times of pain. And I think that each of us kind of know in ourselves when we're using it at a point to stay stuck in misery as an excuse because we don't want to move on, or we don't know maybe what it looks like. I had to have people around me, my therapist mostly, explain to me what it would look like to move on from these painful experiences, because I didn't know who I was if I didn't define myself based on that experience. Who am I without, without that experience, you know? And that was scary to me. It felt like a betrayal, and it felt scary to me. And I almost had to allow myself the grace to step into that new life and say, it's not even like I deserved it. It was like, what other option do you have? To stay in misery for the rest of your life, or allow inch by inch, foot by foot, mile by mile, day by day, hour by hour, to allow yourself the grace to have the best life that you possibly can. Those to me they're two distinct choices. Misery, or slowly allowing yourself to have a better life. And I think in any situation I've gone through is like, I deserve to have a better life. We all do. And so if I'm going to allow myself that, then I have to work through it. And I have to also acknowledge that I don't want to live in misery and pain for the rest of my life. I can use everything that I've gone through as an excuse for staying stuck for the rest of my life. But then that to me is a life wasted. And I don't want that for myself, and I don't want that for anybody else. This is a great meditation today and a good reminder for me. So thank you for listening to me. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.